Yukon's premier is pleading with people to get vaccinated against COVID-19. The territory is dealing with a surge, and there are now 156 active cases. In the last 7 days, Yukon had a higher rate of active cases than any province or territory in the country, with 289 cases per 100,000 people. Premier Sandy Silver declared a state of emergency yesterday. He is in Whitehorse. Premier, thank you very much for joining us today. How did your territory get here to the state of emergency?
Thanks for having me, Katie. We've been watching the case count. We had an average of about 10 cases per day for a while. We announced on October the 15th further measures from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, including mandatory vaccinations and the scheduling. And then as of Friday, Friday the 5th, we saw a huge spike in cases, as you mentioned. So confirmed more than 115 cases of COVID-19 since Friday. So we released a document this summer, the new normal document, basically forging ahead about how we need to be ready to stand up emergency measures, to stand up procedures if and when outbreaks happen. Katie, as you can remember as well, in the summertime, we were on national news saying we have the highest population of vaccinated individuals then, but we still had an outbreak at that time too. So not out of the woods. It's not necessarily about one number about how many people are vaccinated, but also where those vaccinations in different parts of your community, different age groups are more or less. And that's what we're seeing as far as transmission amongst the unvaccinated.
So as a result of this surge that you noticed that it really picked up on Friday, do you know where that came from or how that happened? Have you figured that out yet?
It's a combination of things. Our chief medical officer spoke to this today. As the weather gets a little bit cooler, people are indoors more. We are seeing across the nation, some upticks in numbers as well. People gathering, there's different situations, but we're at a place right now where a lot of the cases inside of Whitehorse are untraceable at this point. Therefore, really having us to declare the state of emergency, allowing us to implement some temporary measures recommended by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Elliott, to make sure that our system doesn't get completely overwhelmed. So this is quick movement. You have to remember as well, Katie, our system here, we're a small jurisdiction, just over 40,000 people, Yukon-wide, large geographical area, but our systems, we have a small number of beds, so it doesn't take long before the 4 beds get used and utilized. So we really did know into the summer and moving into the fall that we had to be ready for the inevitability of new variants down the road, but also outbreaks here in the fall.
In August, when cases were in a much better place, the Yukon lifted a range of restrictions, including masking in public spaces. Was that a mistake when you think back at that?
No, I think, we spoke today again about, as we put these new measures in place under a fine-tooth comb, people can criticize the different requirements and restrictions here and there. But, ultimately, every jurisdiction that's following science and the advice of the medical communities, we're all going to make mistakes. But I still hold fast that areas that adhere to those recommendations, we're going to make the least amount of mistakes. What we did notice with masking is, it was quite interesting. We all remember back early days of the pandemic. I remember the first person in my community wearing a mask and how odd that was. Now it's odd when we see somebody not wearing a mask in public. So for the most part, Yukoners were wearing masks. We believe that, again, with the mandatory vaccinations that we announced in October and other measures, as well as the recommendations, there were still recommendations from the Chief Medical Officer of Health as far as gathering and you want to be as least restrictive as possible. But at the same time, when we start to see surges or strains in our medical systems, that's when we really have to take some more restrictive actions.
In getting to this point, is there anything, when you look at the decisions that have been made by your government, is there anything you would have done differently?
It's hard to say. There's nothing specific comes up. There's always it's always hard to get the information from the chief medical officers out as quickly as possible without being criticized of not consulting or we get these out so very quickly as well, and business communities are asking, what are we going to do? What are we required to do? There's lots of questions as we struggle to get the logistics out from the recommendations. So, as opposed to one specific thing to do it differently, it's more about making sure that our system works as well as it possibly can. You got to remember too, Katie, a lot of the folks that are on the front line that are doing the logistics, the justice, the inoculations, the testing. These folks have been run off their feet for 20 months now, as every jurisdiction. So it's more about how do we make sure as we continue to move forward with our modus operandi that we do it as effectively as possible and communicate as quickly as possible as well. There's always more work to be done.
Today at your news conference, you spoke about a disturbing trend that you're hearing about involving people on the front lines who are being harassed by people who do not agree with vaccine mandates. Can you describe for us what you're hearing that's actually happening on the ground right now?
Yeah, again, these healthcare professionals that are giving the inoculation that are there at the vaccine clinics, this isn't their only gig. They have an awful lot of other responsibilities to keep people safe. And when asked to declare, that you're here within your free will and that you are okay with the vaccine, they're getting a lot of ire from people that are feeling that they don't necessarily want to be there, but have to be there. We've heard cases of physical abuse, verbal abuse, and my comments today was that's not very Yukon of people, that's for sure. We're known for our community spirit in the Yukon. It's something that draws people here from afar and also keeps people who are born and raised here staying here. And it's just not the Yukon way. I urge people, don't take this out on the people that are working on the front line. And you've seen this right across the country, people attracting attention and protesting in areas where they shouldn't, in my opinion, interfering with the health professionals. And to see that in Yukon, it's troubling for sure. And my comments today was, look, these policies are government policies. This is on me and my government, and these folks are just doing their job. Please be respectful.
Given what everyone in the world has experienced over the past 20 months or so, how do you feel when you hear about these kinds of stories?
Oh, I go through a range of emotions. Anger, disappointment. I get upset. To see how hard people are working, and also, again, to see we were so proud of Yukoners right out of the gate. As far as inoculations early in North America. We stepped up and we rolled up our sleeves. And so most of the stories that come out of Yukon, and Dr. Tam talked about how Yukon is a jurisdiction to emulate. So we're very proud people too. We were very happy to see that most Yukoners, and we still see it, most Yukoners are understanding and are doing what's best. We get a lot of those stories too. We get a lot of people looking out for their neighbors. We get a lot of people that comment about this is the right thing to do. There are people that are hesitant, and we understand that. We completely understand that, and we would rather the approach be, more dialogue, more positive dialogue. Don't cut out people in your life because they disagree with you. And so, when you see people overreacting and reacting in this violent way on the front line, it really does give you a range of emotions. That's for sure. I was shaking today talking about this.
The vaccine mandate that you've introduced for government employees and frontline healthcare workers, I just want to clarify something that came up today. Is it you will be forcing employees who do not meet the requirements to go on unpaid leave? Is that correct?
Yes.
So when is that going to happen, and how's that going to work?
So we have a schedule for first vaccination by the end of this month, and then a schedule for the second vaccination will be January the 30th. So you need to get your first vaccine by those dates, by the end of this month. And so again, allowing, now that NACI made a different recommendation for 8 weeks in between, we've extended that deadline now to January 30th for second vaccination.
All right, we're going to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much, Premier.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.